Karen with the Rugger's Edge. I'm so excited to see you all today. I'm doing a very special session today with the folks at NextPhase Rugby. You can see Greg with us and also two coaches. We've got Mike Geibel. Did I say that right? Yes. And Laura Miller with Aquinas. They're going to join us today to really give us a perspective on what NextPhase does from a coach's perspective. And then what's really special about today is Greg is going to walk us through what it looks like to use this platform as a student. And quite honestly, I had this chat with Greg a couple weeks ago, and I was not aware of how many awesome things you can do in this platform. So I'm really excited. I'll be learning along with you and obviously want to encourage student athletes and families to take a look. So what we're going to do, I'm going to actually, before we do that, I gave you a very brief introduction, but if we can go Greg, Mike, Laura, if you want to just do a brief introduction about who you are and what you do before we jump into the platform.
Sure. I'm Greg Stelluti, and I am the president of NextPhase Rugby. Started the program because, I coach high school rugby, and I wanted to provide a resource for kids that's easy to use and inexpensive for them to connect with college programs. So we started working on this about in 2020, and about 9 months ago, it came to fruition and we launched. And as of now, we have over 1,000 athletes on and about 250 schools registered utilizing the program.
That's great. Yay, I'll be so excited to learn more. Mike, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Coach Mike.
Sure. Mike Geibel. I'm the head coach of the Wheeling University men's rugby team, varsity program here in Wheeling, West Virginia. We also are now starting to recruit for a women's side that we're hoping to get started in the next year or so. I come from a coaching background down in Florida and with some club teams and adult clubs over the summer and stuff. And then, kind of came up here to a varsity program and, getting much more into recruiting on the varsity side, whereas club, it was just kind of pulling from the student.
Cut out.
The school.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Laura?
Yeah, hi, I'm Laura Miller. I'm the head coach at Aquinas College for the women's rugby team. We're a full varsity women's program located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And we're a brand new program. So I'm using NextPhase all the time because we are in a recruiting year. Our team actually will arrive this coming fall when we're launching competition and launching the program. So I'm really excited to be here and talking about NextPhase because there are so many opportunities for young women specifically to compete at the varsity level in rugby and at club level as well. And I just think a platform like this really shows the athlete what all of the opportunities are for them. So starting at a young age is really key, I think.
Great. Okay, so with that in mind, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to switch this over to Mr. Greg, and I'm going to let him walk us through some stuff. And then coaches, as we're kind of going through stuff, if you want to chime in about things that you want to point out that were helpful to you or things and tips or tricks or anything like that for students, we will be on our way.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So right now I'm logged in as my son, Jake Stelluti. He's actually a junior. He's in his 6th year of rugby. And so he's getting into the process of looking to where he's going to be going. Unsure about what he wants to major in, but there's a lot of different features he's going to be able to utilize, within the app to start searching for programs. So as you see, logged in right away, you see a list of some featured schools, which are a lot of our premium content. So you see, of course, Wheeling University here with Mike. Mike's done a great job completing his profile. So you can go in, you can see what majors are offered, different requirements for academics, things like GPA and SAT, get a good understanding of what the in-state, out-of-state tuition, room and board, also men's team, and what type of program is it? Is it a varsity program, a club program, competitive 15s, competitive 7s, and then some more just information about the rugby program itself. And this is a big one because, things like division and conference, governing bodies, it's kind of difficult sometimes for kids to decipher as they're looking all around the country. There's a lot of different divisions, teams do move, a couple governing bodies, so kind of helps them sort this information and understand it a little better. Also gives them some awards, accolades, and then of course going into Mike's bio as coach. Then on the left side gives some more contact information as well as links to social media. Then we can take a look at some media. You can have links to see links to different videos, of course, photos, any upcoming events. So Mike has a residency camp coming up in June, which is a great event. And then some roster openings, any position that he's looking for in what year. Actually, if you go back into the residence, you can actually get some more information on it. Click on some links. It tells you a little bit more about it and some photos. So it gives me a good idea of, hey, this is something I might be interested in. I want to give Mike a call, and this could be a camp that I want to go to. Also here on the left-hand side, you can see, who's been viewing my profile. A lot of activity from a lot of different schools looking. Who's following me. So they're following me every time I make a change to my profile, they'll get an alert letting them know something changed. So maybe my GPA went up, or I added some award or accolade, something like that, and they get an alert that it's been changed. And these are the schools that Jake is currently following. Now, one of the more powerful features, I think, of the app, especially for the player side and the schools, is the advanced search feature. So you can actually just go in and search for a school by name. But let's say Jake is really interested in going to a Pennsylvania school. He can come down, select Pennsylvania, apply, and all of the schools in the app that are in Pennsylvania are going to come up. And he can narrow his search down there. You can go into more advanced, where you can start, going into, okay, what schools can I get into based on my GPA, SAT scores, or if I have a specific major in mind, I want to know who has accounting, I can search by accounting and see all the schools, throughout the country or geographic. You can do a lot of different filters for this. If I want to see who does offer scholarships and grants, we can check that off as well, and then see all that information. So if I just reset this and want to see, if scholarships and grants are available, it'll give me a list of schools that have them both.
So until you clicked that scholarship button, so if I am Jake and I'm looking for schools in Pennsylvania, you would get a mix. Like he would get some club programs, he would get some varsity, he'd be able to see. But these are programs that are currently a part of NextPhase, right? So like at
Correct.
this point, this is a separate conversation, but for the college coaches that are going to watch this, it is helpful for them to also create a profile with NextPhase as well. So it's kind of a dual session right now. I want to make sure to educate students and families, but also college coaches that are out there as well.
Absolutely, because only the schools that are joining as either a free or a premium member are going to be on NextPhase Rugby platform. So they need to come in, create their profile. All that information you see there is created by the school. So it's an accurate information, always updated, because that's another good thing. Contact information is updated, events are updated, what positions that are needed are updated. So it's really some of the freshest information out there on the school programs.
That's great. So Mike or Laura, I'm just going to kind of throw it to you for a quick second. So let's say you were looking at Jake. Is there anything when a student is making their profile, is there anything that you've noticed that is especially helpful? Things that you wish more students filled out, or what do you think about this piece? So if I am, a sophomore or junior right now thinking about making a profile, what are some things you're looking for here?
So I would say first and foremost, as for a high school student, making sure your information is accurate, right? Always double checking that you've got the correct graduation year, the most up-to-date GPA, all of that stuff. But very often, one of the things that I see is maybe only one or two majors is listed. And then I speak with the student and I learn that, oh, actually, they haven't actually decided on a major. They're interested in a whole bunch of things, but they only listed one or two things, right? And it's just out of luck that I talk to them. And maybe our school offers or doesn't offer a lot of the things they're interested. But for example, our school doesn't offer engineering. So if a student only lists engineering, I'm probably not going to reach out to that student, right? But very often the student's interested in engineering, but they're also interested in math, and they're also interested in a couple of other things. So I would say don't close any doors when you're filling out this profile. Put as much information as possible in your profile.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, graduation year is one that it's on all the profiles, but that's something that I definitely look for. Our application for the school doesn't open until August of the student's senior year of high school. So, if they're in there and they're following us and things in the app, that's great. We can start a conversation with them, but we can't actually have them apply to the school and start actually making conversations about, coming to the school and scholarships and things like that until their senior year. So that's one of the big ones that I filter by a lot in the search is graduation year, and then also position as well.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, one of the things I am hearing also is, make sure that if you're a student athlete, you're responsive. If you get a request for contact information, you're going to get an alert, of course, on your phone or when you log into the system, which is great. But you're also going to get an email, and then that player's parent or guardian will get the email as well saying, what specific college has requested your contact information. Go in, if you want that person, be responsive, allow them to get your contact information. And if they contact you, reply back. Even if you're not interested, reply back, let them know, or have a conversation and just see. Because more conversations you have, the more you're learning about programs. So I think it's really important to make sure you're responsive as you're getting those things, but also be proactive. Don't just wait for schools to contact you. If you're a premium member as an athlete, you have contact information for hundreds of schools. You can reach out to them and be proactive in your search.
So let me ask you a quick question, Greg. So if Jake is interested in Wheeling, for example, does he message Coach Geibel through this, or does he use that email address that's on the profile? I think that was one
on the
of the
profile,
things.
correct.
Okay.
So all of these universities, like we will go into Marion University, John Harley has all of his information here. You could text him, you can call him, you can email him, make it very easy to get in touch with the coaches.
Okay, so it's not like a whole, I think I was worried students are like managing messaging within this app plus emails, but basically this is a good place where you get the most updated contact information, but moving forward, the communication with Coach Geibel or Coach Miller would be outside of the app.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct. And we want to let parents have the opportunity to determine who they can contact, because some parents would like all information to go through them, and then they'll filter, of course, to the student and get them involved. Or some say, yep, you can contact my son directly or daughter directly. And that's okay too, but we want to give them that ability to kind of just determine who is allowed to contact them.
Okay. So Coach Geibel, or maybe it was Coach Miller who mentioned, when you're searching, so on your end, do you search by a GPA range? Do you only search by what is your current, I guess, process when you're using NextPhase? Or do you only reach out to students that reach out to you first? I'm just curious how that works.
It goes depending on the time of year, right? It's definitely cyclical. So earlier summer and fall, I'm in NextPhase a lot looking for my upcoming recruiting class for the next year. I'm starting to look at 2023s, right? Class of 2023 in the app. But when I'm searching, first and foremost, I'm usually searching by graduation year. And then I look geographically very often, and that's specific to my program and where we are. I'm certainly looking outside of the Midwest as well. But if I see a student who's a good student who's interested in an academic program that we have and is in the Midwest, then I'm absolutely going to contact them through NextPhase if they give me their contact information.
Yeah, it's very similar for me. I start kind of with a broader net in the early on in the cycle, where I might just be looking by graduation year or certain positions, things like that. And then as it kind of gets into the year and I'm narrowing down those positions and things, then I want to make sure that I'm able to contact and reaching out to the students that, if they choose to apply to Wheeling, will get in, so I set the GPA minimum and the SAT and things like that. And then, the programs that we have, the academic programs, we have some majors and some that we don't. And we just got, a lot of a big grant for our nursing program. So that's one that I've been using recently, is looking for students who specifically want to study nursing, because that's, something that we can kind of, offer that is kind of a selling point. So, yeah. It kind of starts out very broad and then kind of narrows down as I kind of find majors or positions and things that I'm looking for specifically.
Yeah, well, something that I really like about this platform that I've obviously been starting to share the information is, for a lot of students, especially ones where parents aren't aren't really sure how recruiting works, and actually rugby, because it is so kind of scattered about how different programs recruit. A lot of families are just overwhelmed, and students may not even engage with this process because it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think the NextPhase platform makes it really easy to just get started, and see,
Right.
like, this is how you connect with coaches. And I like that from an accessibility standpoint. I think a lot of students, may not have a parent, may not have a high school coach who is, understands the process either. So then they're kind of on their own. This is a pretty like start to finish like way of like, look, it's pretty straightforward. It looks really intuitive about like, just all these students know how to use apps. Like they can fill this out on their own. I'm sure you were mentioning it can be on your phone as well. So there's things
Right.
that they can do to start the communication, which is really good. I wanted to highlight something that Greg had shared with me, and I'm curious the coach's thoughts on where on your profile students can put references. Have you, here, because I often have students that only, if they have a resume, they might only put their high school coach, but if they play for other teams, if they want to put, employers or other people that can speak to their character, they might want to put that in there. Is that something, coaches, that you take a look at? Do you contact any of those folks?
Yes, absolutely. And normally, so I will say that normally if I'm going to call a reference, and which I often do before actually offering an athletic scholarship to a student, I usually ask the student for the reference directly, because at that point I've already, I have the contact information, I've built a relationship with the student and their family. And so at that point I say, who would you like me to contact as a reference? But I love seeing the references on their profiles, because that shows me, again, that they're engaging in the process, right? That they have this sort of list of people who will vouch for them. And will say that this is, someone who should be going through this process. So I think it's absolutely something that if you are, again, filling out that profile, more information is always better.
Right. And I know I'm listed as a contact for all of the players on my team, and I'm getting a lot of contact, requests for, tell me a little bit about the player, tell me a little about, would they be a good fit here? So coaches are absolutely using it. But I'm seeing a lot of profiles that are out there that don't have them on there. So it's a really good opportunity for players to, to put them on so they can, the coaches can reach out to them.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that we like to see as coaches. But it's something that, at the varsity programs, you're looking at offering a scholarship for, up to 4 years, 5 years for some students. That's not a small amount of money and commitment from the school. So you want to be able to see that not only do they have the rugby skill, which you can see through watching them or their video and every film and everything else, but that they have the character that you want to bring into your team and keep that culture that we're all kind of looking for.
Yeah. Something I wanted to highlight too, that I need to have a profile, because I often, so one of the things, obviously, I work with like I've mentioned, a very small percentage of rugby players out there that probably need more, a little bit more support through the process, on top of recruiting. It might be, applications and essays and those sorts of things. But one of the things I often get questions about is, simply, maybe they're not looking at a varsity program, they're not looking for specifically athletic scholarship. And they might just be saying, look, I'm looking for a school in the Midwest that does have engineering, but is, competitive, but, I'm not really interested in committing 15, 20 hours to rugby. And they're almost like, I don't really know how to find that. So I like in your search schools section, a student can just search for like that area, but then also under your program type, maybe they're like, I don't want varsity. So they can just search for club. And I think some either the club programs or even on the family side, they feel strange about saying that. When I'm like, look, it's not for anyone to judge what you want in your college experience. Some students want a varsity experience and some don't. And I think that's great. If you know that about yourself and you're like, look, I love playing rugby, want to go to practice a couple days a week, I want to have a great time on Saturday, have a great game, and that's it. I also want to, do other stuff. That's fine too. And so just making sure that students understand that their process and their path is totally individual. and this is a great way to kind of sort through that and find the programs that are a good fit. If that's the student you have in front of you, and you don't want to waste Coach Geibel's time or Coach Miller's time, right? For them to continue to have these conversations, if that's not even really what you're looking for. You're like, look, I want to stay in California. I wouldn't waste their time, and say thank you very much, but I really just want to stay in California. I think it saves time on both ends, from the players and the coaches.
Absolutely. And there's some times that, maybe they make the choice and they go to school, whether it's a varsity program, club program, and it's just not the right fit and they realize it early. They can still utilize the app and go in as a college transfer. And now schools can search based on, okay, who's playing at a school and would like to maybe transfer, and maybe we are the good fit for them. Maybe they want to elevate the rugby, or maybe they just, they don't, like you said, have 40 hours to commit to rugby a week or whatever it may be. They only want to do, Tuesday, Thursday practice, game Saturday. So that is another option within the app.
Great. Are there common questions that come up through using this app that tend to, either from the coaches or Greg, that you get that would be helpful for students and families to be aware of as they're kind of using this for the first time? Are there common things that come up?
I will say that there is a common myth in college recruiting in general, that if I want to recruit a student, that I will reach out to them, right? And that's not necessarily always the case, because in rugby, we are developing into varsity athletics. And just because I see an athlete play or I learn about an athlete, that does not mean that I have the athlete's contact information or even know their coach, right? Or have all of the details of how to get in touch with them. So especially for high school students, they have sort of this myth that like some coach is going to come find you and recruit you, right? This is supposed to be, a process in which the student is completely engaged and they are reaching out and they are looking for the fit that's right for them. And this is why I love this platform, because it's really focused on the student. They decide if we get their contact information, and it connects them to so many other people. It's completely impossible for me as a coach to see every single high school girls game that happens every weekend, right? I'm never going to see all the rugby that's being played. But through an app like this, if every girl who's playing high school rugby in the country gets into NextPhase, right, then I'm going to be able to at least let them know that my program exists, right? And if they're interested, then they can have tools to find me. So, I would just say that that's a common myth, that it's completely the coach plucking and picking the players that are best fit for their team. And that's really not how it works.
Yeah.
I think another one that I'm seeing is the players thinking that, I'm not on a team that goes to nationals every year, or I'm not a part of an academy team. I'm not probably someone that a team's looking for. And that's not true. I mean, some high school experience playing rugby is just huge going into a college program. And there's college programs for every, type of ability. I mean, there's, like I said, the club teams that are more social to the varsity programs or NCAA on the women's side. There's a program for everybody out there, not just, the top, 2% in the country. So I think there's, opportunities for everyone, and, people don't join, I think, because of that.
Yeah. And something I'm going to touch on, and I have a College Rugby 101 webinar that's on my website, which goes a little bit more in detail on this. But for a student, who may have just kind of fallen into our world of rugby and is like, what is with all these kind of divisions and conferences, and I don't understand, because it doesn't, unless it's NCAA, that doesn't really make sense compared to what they just saw with March Madness, right, with basketball or kind of your traditional sports. I think the way you sort it, so for families to understand that the divisions, they're there, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee anything, right? So you'll have you have teams that are Division 1A, and some families are like, a student might say, I'm only playing D1A, not knowing that D1AA is very competitive, or Division 2 is very competitive, or small college is very competitive. It's just difference about the way that what conference they want to be in. Varsity, that you can be NCAA, which means you are varsity, but just like Aquinas, for their men's team, it says they're varsity, but non-NCAA, right? So that means that they're underneath the intercollegiate athletics department. And then there's also, so it says Marist here, elevated club. If you don't know what that means, I think it's worth asking coaches, or my understanding of elevated club is you're a club program underneath typically a school's sports and recreation department, but you might get a little more funding, or you are a club that's overseen by intercollegiate athletics, but yet you don't maybe get all of the pieces of intercollegiate athletics. And this is where the confusion for a lot of students might be, and like, well, okay, if I'm Jake and I'm looking at these 3 programs that are on my screen, well, what is the difference? And that would be having those conversations with the coach at Iona, at Marist, at Aquinas, of what are the requirements to be a part of this team. How often are you practicing? How often are you traveling? Do you get academic support? Do you, and those are normally things, if it's varsity, there are certain things that I expect. And I'm sure, for your 2 varsity programs, there are certain things that your athletes get that the club programs don't get. Like, for example, a paid coach, right? Someone who is like, their full-time job is to plan out your practice schedule and your games and your rosters, versus some others, elevated club, you might have volunteer coaches. So I think for students to know that they, as Coach Laura was saying, like, to be invested in and do a little bit of research as well. Not saying that coaches aren't always honest, but I think sometimes you need to make sure that you're just because a coach says, I'm going to offer you a scholarship, I personally want to see it in writing. I want to make sure you're talking to the right person. Can this program even offer you scholarship money? So I really encourage students to start the conversations, have this engagement, but then obviously bringing in trusted adults to make sure you have all the information before you make like any final decisions about where you're going to go.
Absolutely.
Can I ask Coach Mike and or Laura, timeline wise, what does it look like? So if I'm a junior, class of 23, and I create a profile today, right? It's April. When generally do students, if things are all going well, when do offers normally happen? Do they have to commit by a certain time? And I know this varies between programs, but that's a question I get all the time, is timeline. What should they kind of expect?
Well, I'll say for me, I started looking at the class of 2023 around the holidays. So right around New Year, because in the fall, I'm usually really focused on that next year's incoming class. And so started looking at class of 2023 around, the holidays, around the New Year's. And then if I reach out to a student in this platform, they give me their contact information. The first thing that I do is I usually take that email and the parent email, and I put them in a database so that they get invitations from me to any events that we're having, usually like a summer camp or maybe a clinic, or if we're doing like a webinar or something like that, so just so that they hear about what's going on within our program. I always do a Zoom call. So I'll reach out, I'll send an email to the student and to the parent and say, hello, I found your profile on NextPhase. You seem like you might be a good fit for our program. Do you want to jump into a Zoom call? And I'll answer your questions and I'll learn a little bit more about you and see if we want to move this process along. That's usually going on through the junior year. And then just like at Wheeling, our application opens August 1st for the next class. And I usually send an email out to every single student class of 2023 who I've had that Zoom call with, who we want to talk to, and I encourage them to apply. Now we have rolling admission. So that is what happens to a student who has gone through the process early and gotten in junior year earlier into NextPhase. But just because you didn't do that doesn't mean that you can't still apply, right? If you've only found us in your senior year, or later as a transfer, it's just that the timeline is a little more compressed and you have to get those things like FAFSA done really quickly, right? So, I would say if a student starts at the beginning of their junior year, it's usually about a year and a half process of relationship building. And usually it's like the application, I encourage you to come up for a visit or to attend one of our events. And then if we offer them a scholarship, that usually comes out after we've seen their FAFSA. So we usually send a package all together. And so that's not going to happen until after October 1st because the FAFSA opens at the earliest October 1st. So usually I'm sending scholarship offers October and later.
Yeah, it's almost the basically the same timeline at Wheeling. You know, same deadlines, same application opening and FAFSA opening, and we're the same way. We can't actually offer a full scholarship package until we put what we call the worksheet together, which has their state, federal aid, their academic aid, and then any athletic aid on top of that. So
great. I mean, I think the lesson of today, and something I certainly tell students, is it's never too late, right? So if there is a senior who's watching this, class of 2022, you can still reach out, you can still make a profile, and there's definitely still programs that are looking both on the men's and the women's side. So don't, especially that student that Greg, you were kind of describing, the like, I don't really know, I may not be good enough. Like, it's almost like they're afraid of like rejection. And I'm like, look, before you take yourself out of the running, if this is what you want to do, put yourself out there. Like, you don't know until you try.
100%.
And there's enough. I mean, when I started Breggers Edge maybe 10 years ago, there was maybe 2 programs. You know, they're just, and now there's so many more, which means there's more opportunities. And even though high school rugby is growing, it's still not at the point where, oh my gosh, you know, you guys are just getting flooded with like hundreds of prospects. There's still a fairly small amount. I mean, there's, what I'm trying to get at is high school players, like, you absolutely have a shot. If this is what you want to do, you know, there's a lot of programs that are looking for you. So you need to do the best you can to put yourself out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so as we kind of wrap this up, I mean, are there any final thoughts, you know, from any of you for students out there, as well as other college coaches or college administrators that might be thinking about making a profile, that you all want to share?
Well, for me, I think, you know, Laura touched on this earlier, that there's a ton of opportunities out there on both sides, especially the women's side. So, you know, creating a profile, whether it's free or premium on NextPhase, it's going to get you a lot of traction. It's get you a lot of attention and a lot of conversations, because coaches want to find players. There's opportunities there, and on the men's side. So I think it's, you know, like it doesn't have to be that premium membership. It can be that free membership. So it allows you to get contacted and start going through the process. And then if it starts to work for you, maybe you do upgrade to the premium, because then you want to be able to take a little bit more control of you know, your destiny. And then on the college side, you know, we know this isn't the end all be all of, you know, of recruiting for rugby, right? But this is another tool in the toolbox. I mean, Mike and Laura are both extremely active on the recruiting trail. I mean, I've seen them at so many different events all over the place. So, I mean, this is just something that can help them, but it extends your reach, right? Because they said it earlier, you can't be everywhere at once. You're not flying across the country back and forth. This allows you to start getting names, start getting contacts in California, in Texas, in Florida, all around the country. And you may not be geographically located there. So, I mean, I've talked to some schools saying, I've had conversations with kids that I would have never have talked to. I got them on campus and I've signed them. And these are kids that they would have never spoken to prior.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that's one thing that we kind of touched on today is we don't have unlimited budgets for travel and recruiting and everything else. So, you know, it really opens up an opportunity for those players on teams that might not go to nationals, because those are the events, you know, nationals and the bigger tournaments and stuff where we will be able to go. We do have the budget to get to that stuff. But if you're not in one of those teams that's there, you know, oftentimes in the past, you could have been overlooked, whereas NextPhase Rugby has really opened up recruiting to get in touch with those players that we might not have the opportunity to see otherwise.
And I'll just say that as someone who has been a collegiate men's coach and is currently a collegiate women's coach, and seen in NextPhase the number of male athletes and female athletes, there are far fewer female athletes in NextPhase, right? And that's indicative not of anything to do with NextPhase, just the number of athletes, right, that are out there. But there are so many programs, varsity programs specifically for young women. And I can tell you from experience that if you are a high school rugby player, a female rugby player, and you want to play at the varsity level, there is a coach that wants to recruit you. Somebody wants to recruit you, right? Because you are a fit for some program out there. And there's a lot of self-doubt, a lot of thought of like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, right? And so exactly what Karen was saying before, make a profile, right? Just make a profile and see, you know, who's interested in contacting you. because there are so many opportunities out there. So that's my one promise to, current high school female athletes is if you want to play varsity rugby, there is a program out there for you. It's really just about putting your name out there and trying to get as much information as possible.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to mention, if students, I work with students, obviously a primary thing is obviously students that want to play rugby, but over the years, obviously I've worked with siblings and friends and in lots of other sports. Now with traditional sports, the idea of using a platform like this, it's been going forever, right? If you're a football player, you're in Huddle, you're in Be Recruited, you're in these kind of platforms. So I love that rugby, we're kind of like, this is, I think, a sign of where collegiate rugby is going, so this is the norm. This is the norm in other sports, and this is where it should be going with college rugby. So I love seeing that, again, with other sports like baseball and track and field and stuff, similar thing where the coaches are not going to every single track and field competition or cross country. A lot of it is self-selecting of students saying, I'm interested. So, I love that this is here. I think if you have any questions, obviously about the two programs, I'll be listing all of your contact information. And then with NextPhase, you just go, and I'll include the web link, but I think if you're a college program or a student, you just go on there and click create an account and you're on your way. And I'm sure we can include Greg's information if you're a high school coach or a college coach, if you're have questions about having profiles set up for all of your players, if there's a high school girls coach out there, like, yeah, I should probably just kind of, as Greg was saying, like make all of my players make a profile.
Sure.
They can decide to keep adding on, or if they have a boys team, it all kind of feeds itself, right? Like the more players that are on there, the more coaches that are on there, more players. So everything kind of works together. So I love, having this out there. I want to thank all of you for your time today. And I can't wait to, continue to encourage more people to keep playing, and continue playing in college.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Karen.
Yeah,
this is great.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
Of course. All right. We'll talk to y'all soon. See you out on a pitch.
Yeah.
Take care.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.